Imagine a sleepy coastal town called Cannon Beach, Oregon, cradled where the Pacific crashes against jagged cliffs, Haystack Rock looms like a sentinel in the mist, and the air hums with salt and the mournful cry of gulls circling overhead. Here, in a weathered seaside bungalow with a driftwood porch and windows fogged by ocean breath, Daniel, Dan, Pierce and Naomi, now Sato, lived, their 30 years of marriage a watercolor canvas, once vibrant, now washed out, until, at 54, in the gray drizzle of April 2022, they faded. Not with a tempest of screams or a crash of fists, but with a gentle blur, like rain smudging ink, a moment where they stood in the living room, the fireplace spitting embers, and felt the colors drain. They'd raised a daughter, filled a home with the rhythm of waves, and now, in the stillness, the pallet was empty. He was a fisherman, his hands rough from nets, hauling crab from the sea's cold grip. She was a calligrapher, her fingers stained with ink, brushing kanji that danced on rice paper. By their early 50s, their canvas had bled to gray, leaving only the sigh of tides where laughter once splashed. Picture this, two souls stepping from a dulled frame, into a world they'd forgotten how to paint, Dan with his lines, now with her brush, until, by 57, they sketch new skies in the wild, wistful glow of the Pacific Northwest. Step back to 1991 and see them meeting at a spring festival on Spruce Street, the air thick with cherry blossoms and the tang of grilled clams, the sun peeking through clouds to gild the wet sand. Dan, 24, leans against a booth, his denim jacket damp from a morning on the docks, his ash-blonde hair tousled by wind, a string of fish glinting in his grip. Now, 24 too, sits at a table, her kimono sleeve flecked with ink, her black hair pinned with a blossom, a scroll of poetry unrolling in her lap. Their eyes catch, his a piercing blue, hers a warm amber, and he strides over, boots crunching shells, flashing a shy grin. They talk, about the sea catching the dawn, about his love for wrestling the deep, about her joy in tracing life into strokes. He trades a crab for a haiku, their hands brushing over the shell, and asks her to share a lantern as the sky fades violet, the festival's glow warming their faces. She nods, her laugh a ripple on the tide, and says yes. A year later, in May 1992, they marry on Ecola Point, his sweater patched, her dress a silk of her own script, the air sharp with brine as friends toss petals. He promises to trawl her days, she vows to ink his nights. For decades, they blend that hue bright. Here their daughter, Hannah, burst in like a summer swell in 1994, a lively spark with Dan's sharp jaw and Now's deft hands, racing through the bungalow like a gust off the surf. Dan swaps dawn halls for dusk lessons, showing Hannah how to mend a net, their breath fogging as the boat rocks, the sea slapping the bow. Now dips her brush, teaches Hannah to write her name in kanji, the room alive with her giggles and the scratch of ink, the air rich with paper and salt. In 1996, they buy the bungalow, a wave-worn shell with a stone hearth, a porch where kelp dries, and a kitchen smelling of fish and miso. Dan builds a rack, his ropes and traps swaying, the air thick with diesel and spray. Now sets up her desk, her scrolls stacking high, waves, cranes, her garden a patch of sea lavender and iris braving the wind. Picture summer dusk, Hannah chasing sandpipers, Dan boiling crab, now hanging poems that flutter like flags, the Pacific a silver roar beyond. Money ebbs tight, storms splinter the eaves, but the bungalow glows, a canvas for their shared stroke. Feel the colors bleed. By their 40s, the palette dulls. Hannah leaves for Seattle in 2013, studying literature, her room a hold of nets and inkpots, the silence seeping into the planks. The bungalow grows still, the porch sags lonely, the hearth dim. Dan heads out earlier, his skiff slicing through dawn fog, his voice a grunt when he stomps home, oilskin dripping, rough catch, now, sees a fight. She writes longer, her shop in town a refuge, her chatter fading to murmurs as she slumps into a chair. Busy day, Dan, folks want fast now. He tries, let's walk to Havana, feel the sand, or, how about supper at Moe's, but she shakes her head, too tired, maybe tomorrow. They eat apart, Him with a cold clam by the rack, her with rice in the nook, the garden ragged, their words drowned by the tide's moan. By 2020, he takes the loft, it's caught hard under a tarp, the window frosting with a bay they can't chart. Since the fade in April 2022. Dan's 54, his hands knotted like the lines he pulls, his hair thinning under a cap. Now's 54 too, her fingers stiff from years of ink, her amber eyes soft behind fogged glasses. He's just hauled a trap, crabs clacking in the crate, when he steps inside, mud streaking his boots, and finds her by the hearth, brushing a scroll, her tea cold. "We're not vivid anymore," he says, his voice rough as the surf outside. She looks up, her stroke still, her breath a puff in the damp. "I know, Dan, we're just blurred, aren't we?" He nods, slow as a wave breaking. "Yeah, now, we are, it's time to wash it away." They sit by the fire, its embers low, the rain tapping the panes, and agree, 30 years is a hue dissolved. No clash, no sobs, just a tint too faint to hold. They part with a grip, her hand warm on his, a last stroke erased. Watch the skies repaint. They sell the bungalow, too heavy with gray, and split the cash even. Now moves to a flat above her shop, a snug space with a slanted roof, her ink drying by a window streaked with mist. Dan rents a shack near the docks, a tin box with plank walls, a stool facing the waves, a hook for his gear. Hannah calls from Seattle, "Dad, Mom, why now, what dulled?" They stumble, "It didn't dull fast, kid, it just faded off," they say. Friends split, some stay with now, buying her scrolls, others meet Dan for beers at Driftwood. The first year is a haze. Dan fishes in a blur, his traps full but his heart empty, nights spent rocking in that chair, the ocean slap a line he can't cast. Now writes in a fog, her kanji sharp but her soul slack, evenings by her window, the drizzle a veil over a town she can't shade. They miss Hannah's trompe, each other's rustle, the bungalow's groan in a squall. See the hues flare in 2023. At 55, Dan joins a kitesurfing club, a spark after a sailor brags about the winds, his hands trading nets for rains, soaring over Cannon Beach's breakers. He crashes, his balance off from years on deck, but he flies on, hooked on the lift, the spray in his face, the kite blooming red against the gray. The crew is wild, retirees, a young surfer, a widow named June who rides with a steady grip and a flask of gin. They meet weekends, skimming swells, the sun glinting off the waves, turns diving overhead. Dan buys a kite, a crimson wing with a worn harness, and surfs solo one dawn, the shore waking in gold as he arcs the sky. It's not smooth, but it soars, a sky painted anew. Now, at 55, takes up stargazing, grabbing a telescope from a shop on Hemlock, her hands swapping brushes for dials, charting constellations over Haystack Rock. She fumbles, her eyes slow from years at a desk, but she gazes on, drawn to the gleam, the chill on her skin, her first map, a spiral of stars, etched in her mind. Feel them shine by 56. Dan sells his skiff, buys a bike, a blue Trek with a rack, and pedals the coast to Seaside, his kite strapped tight, the wind sharp against his chest. He's not fast, surfers pass, June teases, but speed's not it, the flight is, the sea a new net to haul. He starts a journal, lines and lift, scribbling about divorce, winds, and the rush of open air, his words bold as his old catches. Fishermen read it, then strangers, folks in Astoria, Tillamook, a guy in Bandon saying, "I'm surfing too." Now trades her van for a scooter, a green Vespa with a basket, and zips the cliffs to Nikini, her telescope in tow, the breeze cool on her face. She joins an art class, painting skies, galaxies, dawns, her hands steady with a new hue. Hannah visits Dan, sees the kite, grins, "You're soaring, Dad." She sees Now's canvas, hugs her, "You're glowing, Mom." At 57, they paint in light. Dan cuts fishing days, leads kitesurfing trips, waves, tales, his voice deep, his oilskin wet with stories of gusts. He surfs to Cape Lookout one fall, lands under clouds, wakes to a dawn that fires the sea orange, his bike a steed on the sand. Now scales back the shop, gazes for joy, stars, strokes, her painting stacking up, sold beside her scrolls. She scoots to Oswald West, maps a nebula, the salt sharp on her tongue. They're not rich, his shack smells of brine and wax, her flat of ink and oil. They're not famed, his journal has 460 readers, her art stays local. But they're Dan and now, vivid, alive, redrawn. They meet once, by chance at a beach in 2025, him with a kite string, her with a sketchpad. They smile, swap a verse, part warm, two skies freshly brushed. Divorce at 54 faded us gray, they'd say now, their voices bright. It let us paint again, wilder. Picture America's coasts, Cannon Beach's cliffs to every misty shore, where couples like Dan and now fade every day. Gray divorces aren't ends, they're strokes. I'm Jordan Lane, and this is Gray Divorce Diaries. Their tale is real, raw, radiant, repainted. If it colors you, subscribe. Every day, a new story, people like us, sketching after 50. You're not alone. Let's shade your canvas together.